And the Bank of International Settlements, that's basically the central bank, they're warning that things will be even tougher economically next year as we move from the liquidity phase of the crisis to the solvency phase. That basically means that governments and central banks, they basically plastered over the cracks in the economy this year by reducing rates, injecting more money into the economy, and their other interventionist measures. Maybe they hope we'll be in a better place this year by the end of the year than we actually are. But you can't fix a profitability problem by throwing more money at it. So we're going to see more bankruptcies, even though it's cheap for businesses to borrow. Eventually, they just got to face the music. I asked the chief economist at the Tressis hedge fund, Daniel Lacalle, if that means all that government and central bank intervention could actually make things worse next year since it couldn't get us through the pandemic.
Not necessarily. I think that in the United States and Germany, there's been financial help to businesses that has allowed these small and medium enterprises at least to survive through tax deductions, tax exonerations, and also direct help. No, for example, in Germany, businesses were given the revenues of a month when there was a lockdown. No, all of those things have helped, certainly. The problem is that we started 2019 already with very elevated levels of debt, that the rise of zombie companies that cannot pay interest expenses with operating profits, was already a problem in 2019. The fact that we already had massive liquidity injections in 2019 with very low rates. So the situation that we're going to see in 2021 very likely is that we're going to see the combination of the solvency problems created by the COVID-19 crisis plus the solvency problems created before the COVID-19 crisis with the rise of zombie enterprises.
And then how bad do you think it might get next year and then the following year, for example? Let's compare it to the 2009 financial crisis.
I think that now we are in a similar situation to where we were in 2009 actually, which is that what investment banks analysts are doing is looking at the, for example, delinquency rates, looking at the non-performing loan rates, and saying, look, the ratios are not that big. The ratios are manageable. We all remember how we heard the term manageable about the subprime crisis. But I think that next year is going to be much more difficult than in 2009 for a simple reason, which is that in 2009, at least you could lower rates. At least you could implement measures that were not implemented before. The problem right now is that both fiscal and monetary policies have been exhausted. And the solvency problem is only disguised temporarily. Liquidity and low rates disguise risk for a certain period of time, but then everything starts to pile up, and when it becomes too elevated, it still generates a banking crisis. So I think that what banks are doing right now is what we have explained in this program a few times. They are already tightening lending standards. We are seeing that already happening. It is very difficult to get loans in the United States, in the Eurozone. So that is likely to continue in 2021. 2021 is going to be a very challenging year because GDP growth and the recovery depends on massive credit growth. But credit growth cannot happen at the same time as you have on one side a solvency issue in numerous corporates, while you have banks having to deal with rising non-performing loans.
It's so true. And if we have this threat of continuing lockdowns as well into next year, it's going to be a nightmare. Really, really a nightmare. Daniel, really appreciate it as always. Thank you so much.